warm welcome to the first East Africa Community Post-Budget and Tax Dialogue, brought to you by a number of partners, but especially organized by the Ministry of Finance here in Uganda, Uganda Revenue Authority, Siatini Uganda, and CSBAG. There are other organizations we're collaborating with, and you will be able to see their logos probably running at the bottom of your screen. I am privileged to be your moderator, Iguma Gabriel, and I hope that we'll have a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Special mention, thank you to our broadcast partners, NTV Uganda and Smart 24 TV. But we also know that because of the times we're living in, majority of you are joining us virtually. So to the audiences on Zoom and on the various social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, for our various partners, I would like to say a very, very warm welcome to you. As we talk about tax harmonization, we actually would like to hear from you. So if you're commenting, please use the hashtag EAC Budget 21. I'll just repeat that hashtag EAC Budget 21. We wouldn't like to miss any of your comments or questions. So please use that hashtag when you are commenting or when you are asking a question. We have a very rich menu for you today. We will have two panels. We will have two keynote addresses, and we will have a summary of a survey report that was done in relation to the journey of harmonization of tax policies, especially tax laws in the East African region. We know that the East African community was mainly reinstituted to deepen the economic cooperation between partner states. And from 2010, a common markets protocol was put in force in order to deepen the integration aspirations. Article 83 of the East Africa Treaty provides that the partner states shall harmonize their tax policies with a view of removing tax distortions in order to bring about a more efficient allocation of resources within the community. Now, it is important that we basically take stock of how far this harmonization journey has gone. So largely our conversation today will look at that in the context of East Africa, and many of our examples will be from Uganda, but I assure you that we have participation from people all over the East African region. Some will join us, especially via Zoom, but we're trying to make this conversation as broad and as regional as possible. To kick us off in our discussion today, I'd like to invite to the podium the Commissioner, Economic Affairs, Ministry of East Africa Community Affairs, Mr. Leonard Chizito Ojara. Please, Leonard, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, moderator, Mr. Iguma. The Executive Director, Siatini, Uganda, panelists online and with us here and in all partner states, senior colleagues from ministries, departments, and agencies, fellow government officials, the representatives of the private sector and civil society, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all, and I greet you in your respective capacities. I want to thank wholeheartedly Siatini Uganda, Jane and your team, for convening this very important dialogue to understand tax measures across the EAC partner states for financial year 2018-2019 and 2021 to 2022. Article 32 of the Common Market Protocol provides that partner states shall progressively harmonize their tax policies and laws to remove distortions in order to facilitate free movement of goods, services, and capital, and to promote investment within the EAC community. Article 8 of the EAC Monetary Union Protocol provides for harmonization and coordination of fiscal policies and avoidance of harmful competition. As spelled out in the above protocols, the overall objective of tax harmonization is to create a clear regional approach to taxation of cross-border transactions, to ensure that the partner states are clear on their roles and responsibilities, so that the process of harmonization is implemented in an efficient, cost-effective, and consistent manner. As you all know, the EAC adopted a common external tariff at the commencement of the customs union. However, some domestic taxes are yet to be harmonized. Value-added tax, withholding tax, and excise duty. In a common market, where ideally there is free movement of goods, services, and capital, and the right to establishment, hence investment in another partner state, tax disharmony distorts the market. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's budget theme for all the partner states is economic recovery through industrialization and inclusive growth. As you're all aware, the EAC partner states read their national budgets on 10th of June 2021, with the exception of the Republic of Rwanda, who will read their budget later this month. Colleagues, we can't underscore the importance of harmonizing tax policies and laws in the community in order to facilitate free movement of goods, services, labor, and capital within the EAC region. A viable EAC region requires an efficient tax system that facilitates long-term business planning and safeguarding government revenue. The varied tax systems in the community may hamper the enjoyment of the freedom granted by the treaty, the Common Market Protocol, and the Monetary Union Protocol, hence the need to harmonize the taxes on the model treaty for negotiations with third parties in order to create a clear approach to harmonization of the taxes, which I earlier mentioned. At regional level, the process of developing an EAC policy for harmonization of domestic taxes has been protracted, although significant background work has been completed. The EAC domestic tax policy was approved in 2019, together with the model treaty for negotiating with third parties. However, there are still some issues pending. The work on tax harmonization is being spearheaded by the Tax Policy and Tax Administration Subcommittee that reports its work to the Committee on Fiscal Affairs and eventually the Ministers of Finance of the EAC partner states for final approval. Prior to budget finalization at regional level, partner states share their aspirations in the budgets and make requests for waivers. Ladies and gentlemen, as a coordinating Ministry of Regional Integration Matters, we are always grateful to Siatini, Uganda, for the complementary initiatives you undertake on various regional matters, initiating policy debates on such important issues that foster implementation of the various protocols that the country has assented to at regional and international level. As I wind up, let's continue to share views on harmonization, other possible areas of coordination, conduct for tax administrators, and development of a surveillance mechanism for monitoring the implementation of agreed programs under domestic tax harmonization. Once again, Siatini Uganda, we applaud you and the work you are doing, not only for Uganda, but for the EAC as a whole. I can assure you that this dialogue is not in vain, and this discussion will enrich policymakers with better ideas for post-budget meetings. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wajara. And we totally support all we totally appreciate all the support coming from the Ministry of East Africa Community Affairs, because without you, a lot of the work that Siatini and other partners are doing would not have the kind of impact it is having. You heard from him that in the spirit of harmonization, one of the things that has happened is the partner states, the East Africa partner states, have decided to have the same theme for their budgets and also to read their budgets on the same day. Of course, there have been challenges where it's not completely happening that all the partners are reading their budgets on the same day, but at least the spirit is clear and we're moving towards that. There are other efforts and we'll be hearing about those as we continue this discussion today. And again, I'll emphasize, would like to get your questions, would like to hear your opinion on the harmonization, especially of taxation. So please use the hashtag EAC Budget 21 so that we're able to find your comment wherever it is, whatever platform you choose to use. One of our key partners and organizers of this dialogue is the Ministry of Finance here in Uganda. So I'd like to invite to give our keynote address that will focus on the East African Community Council of Ministers decision for financial year 2021-2022, Mr. Moses Kagwa. Mr. Moses Kagwa is the Director, Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Kagwa, you're very welcome.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this high-level post-ESC tax budget dialogue for 2021-2022. I would also like to thank the organizers, Siatini, CISBAG, ACCORD, ODI, URA, and my ministry for organizing, and to all of you who have spared your time to contribute to this dialogue. This is timely as we face the challenges of COVID-19 and progressing the regional integration agenda. It's one of its kind, and I welcome many of these engagements to enhance awareness and education about the Council of Ministers' decisions in particular, and the East African fiscal policy in general. As government, we embrace opportunities to dialogue with civil society, private sector, and the wider citizenry to increase participation in the process of policy formulation and to better inform policy making. As guided, my keynote address will focus on the highlights of the Council of Ministers' decisions for 2021-2022. Distinguished participants, as we are all aware, Uganda is a member of the East African Community, and as such, we participate in the various processes of the community and are required to enforce the decisions of the community. A meeting of the East African Council of Ministers has not been convened thus far. However, we have had EAC pre-budget meeting and the Sectoral Council on Trade, Industry, Finance and Investment, whose reports are considered by the Council of Ministers. Through experience, most of the recommendations of the pre-budget meetings and the meeting of the Sectoral Council on Trade, Industry, Finance and Investment are passed by the Council of Ministers. I therefore have no doubt that the decisions of STIFI, as we call it, that I am about to highlight will be agreed upon by the Council of Ministers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the budget proposals for financial year 2021-2022 are premised on the need for sustainable industrialization, inclusive growth, employment, wealth creation, import substitution, and recovery from the negative economic impacts of COVID-19 in the East African community. In this regard, the ministry proposed to maintain protective rates ranging from 25% to 60% instead of the common external tariff of 0%, 10%, and 25% on goods manufactured in Uganda for a period of 1 year. These are majorly products where Uganda has a competitive advantage, and they include meat and edible meat offals, fresh or chilled potatoes, sausages and similar products, chewing gums, other sugar, confectionery, chocolates, biscuits, tomato paste and sauce, honey, ready-to-drink juices, ginger, jams, processed tea, and coffee, among others. In addition, we propose to extend duty remission for essential inputs used by manufacturers under the EAC duty remission scheme. These inputs are taxed at a reduced rate of 0% or 10% for a period of 1 year. The normal rates are usually 10% or 25%. This is aimed at reducing the cost of inputs and hence the cost of doing business in Uganda. Some of these inputs include those that are used in the manufacture of textiles, footwear, and assembly of motorcycles and motor vehicles, among others. In this regard, the Sectoral Council on Trade, Industry, Finance and Investment made the following decisions, which will be considered by the Council of Ministers. 1, adopted partner states budget proposals for fiscal year 2021-2022. The detailed proposals will be published in the EAC Gazette by 30th June. 2, decided that equipment used in the manufacture of textiles and footwear which do not qualify for remission of duty be granted a stay of application up to June 30th, 2020. 2. 3, directed partner states that submitted lists for remission of duty to remove items that are available in the region in sufficient quantities. And 4, directed the Committee on Customs to develop proposals to cater for tools, equipment, and spare parts of machines not classified under chapters 84 and 85 that are imported by manufacture of textiles and footwear by November 2021. Usually the machines that attract zero import duty are under chapters 84 and 85, and the others attract duty. Distinguished participants, the protocol for the establishment of the EAC Customs Union provides for the common external tariff as one of the pillars of the Customs Union. The CET was designed to provide a stable, transparent, and predictable trade regime in order to enhance domestic production, attract investments, and create a uniform trade policy across the region. The current CET was negotiated and agreed and adopted in 2004. The CET is designed as follows. 1, a minimum rate of 0% duty levied on imports of raw materials, capital goods, pharmaceuticals, and what you call meritorious goods. B, a middle rate of 10% duty charged on imports of intermediate products. And C, or 3, a maximum rate of 25% levied on finished products. And 4, rates of duty ranging from 35% to 100% on sensitive products. Of course, these sensitive products include milk, they include sugar, and mostly agricultural goods which we can manufacture or produce in the region. Over the last decade, there have been a number of challenges encountered in the implementation of the common external tariff. These include apparent inadequate protection of domestic industries, lack of a comprehensive and cohesive trade and industrial policy in the region, partner states maintaining a degree of fiscal and policy space to make policies and decisions which have an adverse impact on the CET, and then the persistence of non-tariff measures and barriers. We've also had multiple memberships of the partner states in different integration blocks, inadequate institutional and regional frameworks at regional level to support the implementation of the common external tariff. And then there have been also external factors like globalization and increased trade protectionism around the world. As a result of these challenges, the community agreed to undertake a comprehensive review of the common external tariff. The Council of Ministers directed the EAC Secretariat to begin the process of the review in 2016. Negotiations among partner states are still ongoing. Thus far, the partner states have agreed to a revised 4-band structure rather than the current 3-band structure, consisting of 0% for raw materials and other inputs, 10% for intermediate inputs, 25% for finished goods not readily available in the region, and a higher band above 25% for finished goods readily available in the region. However, there's no consensus on the rate above 25%. So the proposed rates are 30% or 35%. These rates of duty align with the overarching policy goals of industrialization, employment, wealth creation, and inclusive growth. Distinguished participants, as you may be aware, the EAC Customs Management Act was passed in 2014, which is 17 years old. There have been some challenges in implementing the Act, and there have been new developments in the area of customs management. In this regard, the Council of Ministers noted the need to review and update it to suit the current times. As such, the Customs Management Act is being reviewed to take into account the developments in trade and the regional development goals and objectives. Distinguished participants, one of the major impediments to regional trade in the EAC is the issue of non-tariff barriers. Whereas trade among the partner states does not attract tariffs, non-tariff measures have increasingly been adopted, which have the effect of reducing intra-regional trade. We are all aware of the recent barriers that Ugandan goods have faced in accessing some of our partner states. And in order to mitigate this menace, the Sector Council has urged the EAC Regional Coordination Committee on COVID-19 to review and harmonize the COVID-19 testing charges, validity, and mutual recognition of certificates with a view to ensure safe and smooth movement of goods and persons in the region. 2, directed the Republic of South Sudan and the Republic of Uganda to operationalize the Nimule Elegu one-stop border post by having all relevant officials operating from the one-stop border post. 3, directed partner states to use regional structures such as the EAC Standards Committee to resolve matters amongst themselves other than taking unilateral interventions. 4, directed the republics of South Sudan, Uganda, and Kenya to expedite the removal of visa fees among themselves. And 4, directed the EAC partner states to remove all discriminatory fees, levies, and charges of equivalent effect. Distinguished participants, the single customs territory was developed to reduce restrictive regulations and or minimize internal border controls on goods moving among partner states with the ultimate objective of free circulation of goods. The objective is to reduce the cost of doing business, reduce administrative costs related to enforcement, among other benefits. The SCT is being implemented, although there are some challenges. However, the business community has greatly benefited from it. Distinguished participants, to reduce smuggling and for easier tracking of cargo in the region, a regional electronic cargo tracking system was developed and deployed. To fully implement the program, the Council of Ministers directed the Uganda Revenue Authority, Tanzanian Revenue Authority, and the Rwanda Revenue Authority to dedicate personnel and other services to facilitate the implementation of the interface. In addition, the Council directed the EAC Secretariat to convene a physical meeting between URA, TRA, and RIA technical teams to commence the implementation of the interface. In addition, the Council directed partner states to secure sustainable financing for this cause. In order to develop the private sector in the EAC, the community developed a harmonized private sector development strategy. In this regard, the Council directed the Secretariat to develop a roadmap, including the preparation of a concept paper and terms of reference for a technical working group to spearhead implementation of the EAC private sector development strategy and fast-track the development of the EAC local content policy. This is intended to enhance the private sector participation in the regional integration agenda. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing the dialogue. To the distinguished participants, thank you for sparing your valuable time to come and attend the dialogue, both physically and virtually. I hope the information shared will assist us undertake the EAC fiscal regime and regional development agenda for God and my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kagwa, representing the Ministry of Finance. Dear viewers, I did mention earlier that another key partner in organizing this dialogue is the Uganda Revenue Authority. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Kagumire Abel, Commissioner Customs, Uganda Revenue Authority, who will give a keynote on behalf of the Commissioner General, Uganda Revenue Authority, Mr. John Musenguzi Rujoki. Mr. Kagumire, you're welcome.
The Director, Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Executive Director, Siatini, representatives from CSBAG, ACCORD, OD, Policy Forum, and other partners, dear participants, the media, and those listening to us, good morning. My name is Abel Kagumire, a Commissioner Customs at URA. I'm here to represent the Commissioner General, Mr. John Musenguzi Rujoki. Basically, we are here to say we are implementers of some of the decisions that the Director Economic Affairs at Ministry of Finance has mentioned. And as Uganda Revenue Authority, I'm here to tell you that come 1st of July of 2021, we are ready to implement these directives. Now, these directives come every year, and this year, like the director has said, is geared towards how we can promote industrialization in our country and make sure we do a bit of protection of those who are really coming up. And we do this in line with Article 82, 3E of the Customs Treaty, which provides that partner states shall harmonize their tax policies with a view to removing tax distortions in order to bring about a more efficient allocation of resources within the community. As you are all aware, we work together at EAC level. We share resources. If you wanted to know, even our resources are already working in the region, in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Nairobi, and even in DRC. We're also trying to get into Juba, into South Sudan. So in line with Article 32 of the Common Market Protocol, it provides that partner states shall progressively harmonize their tax policies and laws to remove tax distortions in order to facilitate free movement of goods, services, and capital, and promote investment within the community. And then Article 8 of the East African Monetary Union Protocol provides for harmonization and coordination of fiscal policies and avoidance of harmful tax competition. So As a region, we really want to get to an upper middle income region within a secure and politically united East Africa based on the principles of inclusiveness and accountability. This is our focus by 2050. Dear participants, the service sector for us as implementers has remained resilient and continues to contribute substantially to the region's economic activities, especially in revenue collection for all the partner states in EAC. And yet agriculture remains the bedrock for almost all the partner states and the economies. So it accounts for more than 25% of our gross domestic product, GDP. And when you look at the statistics, 65% of the volume of intra-regional trade between the different East African partner states, all employment opportunities are within agriculture. Yet, for us in terms of tax collection, we remain collecting more from services. So this means that, like the director has said, we have to come up with policies of how we can promote industrialization, import substitution, so that Ugandans are able to compete favorably in the available markets. Now, some of the decisions, without taking a lot of time, that the director has mentioned that we are going to implement come 1st July 2021. Key one is the various tariff lines across all garments, regardless of what is made by the local players. And Uganda has requested for a stay of application in the East African EAC Common External Tariff, the rate of 0%, 10%, and 25%, and us to apply a duty rate of 35% or $3.5 per kilogram, whichever is higher for 1 year. Now, this is intended to promote the textile sector in Uganda. So to Ugandans out there, get to know that this is not to harm you or hurt you, but it is in line with the government policy of making sure that we promote industrialization, especially in the textile sector. We have been importing a lot of wheelbarrows, like you also know. Now, why should we import wheelbarrows when there is a Myoga program promoting the youth to get engaged in metal fabrications and everything? So we think this year a stay of 10%, introducing EAC rate of 10% for 1 year, to apply it at 25%, is basically to promote local content in that area. There are many others. The director has talked of meat and edible meat offers. Uganda has a lot of cows, but we are still importing offers, yet others are throwing away offers. And I think that is why the director is saying we need to put some bit of protection in this regard. Of course, also in the area of paper and paper labels, batteries, crude palm oil, I cannot mention all of them, but the idea is that these items which we are going to publish, please follow them and adjust your plans to make sure you fit into the new rates that we have announced come 1st of July of 2021. I want to thank the organizers for this program, and I want to assure you that as Uganda Revenue Authority, we are ready. The directive was that the one-stop border posts should be functional. I want to assure you that under the single customs territory, we are working well on all borders seamlessly. Even when you go to Mombasa, our officers work with Kenya Revenue Authority officers. Even in Tanzania, our officers work with Tanzania Revenue officers. The only border which is being still constructed on the South Sudan side is Elegu, and the directive was that we should immediately start working with South Sudan officials on the side of Uganda, and Ugandans should shift and go to South Sudan. On Mutukula side, the border is working very well. If it comes to transit of goods throughout Uganda to other neighboring countries in the East African region, the regional electronic cargo tracking system is up and running. The ministers directed that government should fund it, as we wait for funding to come through, which they have already authorized. We've already partnered with Kenya in the spirit of the East African community to make sure that they host the server for the regional electronic cargo tracking system. And now goods are being tracked right away from Mombasa. You're able to see where they are going into Juba and into Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and up to Rwanda. So that one is already being worked on and it's working. The other area we've worked on in line with the directives is the automation of our systems being linked to all the East African communities. So I'm able to see what has come in at the port, and most of our traders now pay taxes at the port of Mombasa before they even come to Kampala. So our system here in Uganda is interlinked with the system in Kenya and the system in Tanzania. And that is one of the directives. So I want to assure Ugandans and participants here that URA is ready. We are ready come 1st July 2021 to implement some of these decisions. They are for our own good, they are for our good of our country and the good of the region, as we also try to access markets beyond the East African region. I thank you.
Commissioner, thank you very much. The panelists are here laughing because URA sent us a person in charge of health. Once you come to this microphone, he showers you with sanitizer. Yeah, so we're making sure that we are safe. Commissioner, did you say that we import offers? Or offers? The one of Katogo with offers? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you, as you follow the discussion here today, at least from the two keynote presentations we've received, you're starting to get perspective on where we are at in relation to harmonization, especially of tax measures as the East Africa region. Some of the challenges have been made clear, but I'd like to let you know that civil society organizations here in Uganda have done a comprehensive study. And now we're going to receive a presentation on the analysis, the civil society's analysis on the East Africa tax measures for financial years 2018-2019. It's a period of time, so starting from the financial year 2018-2019 to financial year 2020-2021. And to present this analysis is Ms. Jane Nalunga, the Executive Director, Siatini, Uganda. Jane, you're very welcome.
Thank you. It's on. Okay. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, even those who are watching us virtually. I would like to take also this opportunity to thank our partners, government, especially the Ministry of Finance and URA, for the very, very great collaboration with us as civil society. For me, I think this has really been great, and I hope other ministries can also do the same, give civil society space to cooperate and partner. I would also like to thank our other partners, who have been partnering with URA and Ministry of Finance, that's CS BAG and CODE, for also a very great collaboration and partnership. Distinguished participants, I'm going to present a study which we are about to finalize. That's why we are presenting it, so that we get your views. It isn't alpha and omega. This is our perceptions. We did a study. This is what we did find out, and I hope we can be able to give us inputs. So the study is on the analysis of tax measures in the East African Community member states. Are we moving towards a harmonized tax system? That's the question we wanted to answer in this presentation. That's our presentation outline. We'll look at the introduction, then we'll talk about the EAC, tax harmonization agenda. Then we'll look at the study research. Then we'll present the findings, whether we are progressing towards tax harmonization or not. Then we will also discuss the challenges. What are the challenges to tax harmonization? Then last year we'll present some proposals on the implication, but also on the way forward. The tax harmonization agenda, as the previous speakers, distinguished speakers, have all pointed out, that the tax harmonization is provided for under the EAC treaty. There are a number of provisions in this treaty. Article 83, which provides for the harmonization of domestic tax policies with a view of removing tax distortions in order to bring about a more efficient allocation of resources within the community. Another article is 80, 1F, which seeks to harmonize and rationalize investment incentives in order to promote the community as a single investment area. And then Article 81F also, it addresses the issue of double taxation. So what's tax harmonization, and why are we talking about tax harmonization? Tax harmonization, most of you know, is not about having the same tax laws and tax rates. Its aim, the aim of tax harmonization, is to prevent any national tax measures that would have a negative effect on the free movement of goods, services, and capital within the community, and that would also distort competition. So it isn't that we want to have the same, exact same rates. It's a process of adjusting the tax systems of different countries so as to achieve common fiscal objectives. So the key issue is to have to achieve common fiscal objectives, but also to facilitate the flow of goods, capital, and services. Why do we talk about tax harmonization? Is to avoid potential risks associated with engaging in tax competition, especially when it regards corporate tax rates, but also other taxes. It's also about avoiding a race to the bottom when we are attracting investments through generous tax incentive. So it's against this background that tax harmonization is very, very important for our region, that we commissioned. A study was commissioned by several partners. Those are the partners: East African Tax and Gender Network in Kenya, the Policy Forum in Tanzania, Duhingire isi yacu in Burundi, Governance for Africa in Rwanda, Transparency International in Kenya, Tax Justice Network Africa, it's an African network, then Diaconia. Those are the partners which undertook the study. So for any errors, I shouldn't be sacrificed it to those organizations. I'm just a messenger. So what were the objectives of this study? The objectives of this study was to assess the extent to which harmonization of domestic tax laws in the East African partner states have been undertaken. Then also to assess the extent of tax harmonization of domestic tax laws in the partner states, and lastly to identify factors that explain the current progress or non-progress, whatever the case, of the tax harmonization agenda. So what were the findings? Maybe just to say that the study was undertaken in those different countries. It's a big study. We are just giving a summary that we reviewed a number of documents, but we also had interviews with a number of people. One is that the provision on tax harmonization, the EAC treaty, are still very general. You know, they are general provisions. They haven't yet been unpacked. Then two, the common complaint among partner states is that there are no specific guiding principles. Then three, there is a draft code of conduct against harmful tax competition in the community, which was developed as far back as 2011. However, to date, the code is not yet adopted and therefore not implemented. And for us, this was very critical that there is a code, but that code of conduct hasn't yet been implemented. Still on the findings, progress of the EAC tax harmonization, what we found out was that in terms of design and principle, the EAC tax systems are harmonized when it comes to principles. For example, in terms of charging taxes, apart from there are some fees which vary, but in terms of taxes, there is a high level of harmonization. Apart from Rwanda, as you can see, which doesn't provide for stamp duty, but other countries, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, we didn't do, by the way, South Sudan. We didn't, sorry about that. So the corporate tax, it's harmonized. The presumptive tax, harmonized. Rental taxes, harmonized. Payroll taxes, like pay as you earn, harmonized. Rental income tax, harmonized. Withholding tax, harmonized. And also excise duty, value-added tax, harmonized. Gaming and sport betting, harmonized. Stamp duty, like I've said, it's Rwanda, which doesn't levy stamp duty. Other fees and levies are also harmonized. So, like we said, we found out fees vary significantly. And we found out that Uganda charges more fees than other countries. When it comes to direct taxation, we also found that the principle of direct taxation, there is also harmonization, that taxation on direct taxes is based on the principle of imposing income taxes on individuals and corporations, or based on residence and worldwide principle, and this principle cuts across the partner states, the 4 partner states. In Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, residents' income is charged on their worldwide income, and for non-residents, income tax is charged on income only sourced from the country. When it comes to personal income taxes, we saw that they greatly vary, especially for low-income earners. Please go down. For low-income earners, that's the personal income taxes. When you look at the table, you look at for personal incomes below $67, and this is how it is in Uganda. Below $67, the rate is 10%. In fact, people start paying in Uganda and Rwanda. People start paying in Uganda, you start paying taxes 67 when you earn $67. Start earning $67. In Rwanda, $30. You start paying taxes. At least it's a bit better in Kenya, because you start earning when you earn $223, and in Tanzania when you earn $116. So for Rwanda and Uganda, it's terrible. In fact, one time we were proposing they increase it at least to 500, you know, so that people start paying taxes when they earn 500,000, so that you can be able to have some money to spend in your pocket. And I hope, Mr. Kagwa, you will be able to take on that request. What we found out on the issue of personal income tax, again, the rates, is that there is a level of harmonization for the those earning more money, those earning higher income. For example, in Uganda, the people who are earning more than, around 2,835, that's around 10 million. They are paying $823. In Rwanda, they are paying $815. In Kenya, $892. In Tanzania, around 721. So there is a level of harmonization for people earning at that high level. So again, this is an area which needs harmonization, especially for low income earners. Then the issue of the corporate income tax. The issue of corporate income tax, their rates which their rates are harmonized, because Uganda, it's 30%. For Kenya, resident companies, 30% also. Although branches of foreign companies, which are in Kenya, pay 37.5%, Tanzania, Rwanda, 30%. But when it comes to capital gains tax, Uganda, we charge 30. For Kenya, in fact, Kenya didn't have, it was reintroduced in 2015. They didn't have capital gains tax, and the rate now is 5%. For Tanzania, it's a flat rate of 20% and 10% for residents. So we're saying that it needs to be harmonized. For Kenya, 5% is very low, and this is what we call that competition. You know, it needs to be harmonized. When it comes to VAT rates, exempt and zero-rated items, there is also a high level of harmonization. It has already been reached when we talk about VAT, which is very good. Excluding Kenya, all other states, their VAT is 18%, but Kenya charges 16% VAT, which isn't 2% is maybe the URA will tell us whether the difference of 2% is a problem. But then we saw the problem is on petroleum oils, 8%, and it has implication on trading in fuels. 8% is very low. Then we saw that all countries had preferential treatment of exempt or zero-rated welfare support goods and services. And I think this has been pointed out by Mr. Kagwa. But there are also differences in VAT law, which exists on items listed under the exempt and zero-rated schedules. But when it comes to excise duty, the rates are, the structure is a bit complex because every country has a mixture of tax rates, specific tax rates, and ad valorem tax rates which exist. Maybe specific rates is where they say fuel shillings, 100 shillings. But ad valorem, that's where they say 5% maybe of the value, percentage of the value. So there is a mix in countries regarding that. And this is an obstacle when you are comparing the tax burden on the goods being taxed. Because if you want an exact comparison, the basic prices as well as the quality has to be identified. So it's difficult to compare the excise duties. We found it a bit difficult. Regarding the issue of tax incentives, the issue regarding all countries, all the partner states, we found out they have incentives that amount to tax exemptions for investors. And we found that there are significant differences regarding the tax incentives which are applied. Kenya and Uganda have automatic tax exemption regime where the taxpayer meets the set criteria. Like in all our laws, they will say, for example, companies which are in the industrial parks, they exempted, automatically. Tanzania requires a minister to exercise discretion to grant the exemptions. There are, however, executive exemptions in Uganda. We know that, though they are not statutory. Uganda and Kenya have time-bound exemptions for 10 years. While Tanzania exemption regime is not limited by time. It's open-ended. Uganda has an elaborate regime that lists the qualifying sectors. In fact, I think each year, even this year, it was there, the list is there. In Kenya and Tanzania, regimes are wider without being limited to specific sectors. Tanzania has used the CIT rate in some sectors, while Uganda and Kenya only have the 10-year exemptions. Uganda tries to favor local industries and EAC citizens. In fact, Uganda will have gone by the letter of the treaty. And you remember the whole issue of our local content bill. The president was saying, EAC. But we found our other partners, states, they are quiet about EAC when it comes even to giving incentives. Our study was looking at the last 4 years. That for the last 4 years, are we moving towards tax harmonization or not? And these are our conclusions, whether we are moving towards tax harmonization or not. That there is limited deliberate efforts to harmonize tax laws at the EAC level. If it was in school, say we need to pull up our socks. It mainly happens, there has been some tax harmonization, and I think Mr. Moses Kagwa pointed out those areas of tax harmonization. But what we found out was that it was because of benchmarking. When you are policymakers, when they are amending their laws in the Ministry of Finance, they benchmark what is Kenya doing, what's that country doing, then you come up with those laws. But it's not a deliberate effort that we are harmonizing our laws. Unlike the common external tariff, which Mr. Moses Kagwa clearly elaborated on, amendments are approved at the EAC level when it comes to the CET. And he pointed out to the discussions, the ongoing discussions under the CET. However, domestic tax amendments are done in isolation. Kenya, we see, Uganda, we sit and we do our domestic tax amendments. There are few cases where domestic laws are discussed at the EAC level. For example, we found out in 2018, partner states agreed to exclude VAT on some essential goods and services that are consumed domestically as medical supplies and educational materials. And I think there is also another instance where, which Mr. Moses Kagwa pointed out. But these are few cases, and what we are saying that it would be good, to have such more discussions regarding amendments on the domestic tax amendments. So what are the challenges when it comes to tax harmonization? Why aren't we moving towards tax harmonization, despite the fact that the EAC treaty clearly provides for tax harmonization? The issue of a lack of a guiding principles on tax harmonization. The code of conduct, which was developed almost 10 years ago, hasn't yet been adopted. Then, like you have pointed out, the process of amending the tax laws are also done in isolation, and sometimes it brings out, member countries, going away from, a middle point of harmonizing their tax laws. Then there is also the issue of individualism among partner states. They look inwards. We look inwards into our domestic matters instead of the community matters. There is also fear of revenue losses. There is also the issue of weak M&E framework, monitoring and evaluation framework in the ESR agenda on tax harmonization. We benchmarked the EU code of conduct, and we found that EU had a code of conduct. They even put in place a committee, So it will also be good for the EAC to benchmark on what the EU is doing. In fact, by 2019, the EU had done an assessment of their domestic laws, 700 assessments of domestic laws. So we can be able to use that example of the EU Code of Conduct. And lastly, the challenge is lack of political support and also some levels of intra-community misunderstanding. For example, the EU Code of Conduct is not legally binding, but it has very strong political support. So why are we pushing for tax harmonization? What are the implications of tax harmonization? As already recognized by EAC, regional integration can't be achieved without tax harmonization. The two go together. And as previous speakers have already pointed out, the free movement of capital goods and capital goods and services, we need a harmonized tax policies. Tax harmonization also plays an important role in mitigating tax competition, which has significant implications on the race to the bottom. It's already happening, competing for investors, but at the end of the day, the benefits go to the investors, not to our countries. And I think there is a need to study welfare implication across the region. For example, in Uganda and Rwanda, personal income tax rates greatly affect the low-income earners. What are the implications of that? Can we be able to address that as a region? And sometimes a lack of tax harmonization raises the appetite to smuggle, especially if one country has, those differing tax rates. So what are our suggestions on the way forward? The Code of Conduct against harmful tax competition should be adopted and implemented, and maybe there is a need to revisit it because it was put in place 10 years back. It can be revisited to see whether it's fit for purpose now, but the whole idea is to have that Code of Conduct implemented. And we're also proposing that a committee should be instituted to monitor and report on tax harmonization in the EAC. But already I think there is a committee which Mr. Abel, you and also Mr. Moses Kagwa, you pointed out. The EAC Committee on Fiscal Affairs, maybe it's a matter of giving that committee this role. There is also a need to put a requirement that at least those domestic tax amendments pass through that committee to verify, to assess whether they are leading to tax harmonization. If not all the taxes, at least the tax incentives should be agreed on at the EAC level. And I think we also need to estimate the cost and benefit of tax harmonization. Most people just look at the cost, but we also need to assess the benefit. And there is also a proposal which we put forward to develop an online platform that tracks tax amendments across the region. This will support easy comparison and subsequently allow for early intervention against harmful tax measures within the region. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the findings of the study. Their findings, and we ask for proposals to enrich it. You can say that isn't right, that's wrong, but the whole issue is to be able to work towards harmonizing our tax policies within the region, so that we promote deeper regional integration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jen Nalunga, Executive Director, Siatini, Uganda, for sharing with us the results from the analysis done by civil society on harmonization of tax laws in the East African region, looking at financial years 2018-2019 to 2021-2022. Very long period of time, which you will agree with me, she's done an amazing job at trying to bring that in about 20 or so minutes. But you realize that a number of questions were raised in relation to some of the things we had had earlier on. In a very short while, we are going to have responses. In fact, we're going to have reactions to the findings from civil society. And so we'd also like to get your responses on these findings. So please remember, send us your comment. Use the hashtag EAC budget 21, EAC budget 21. That's if you are on social media. If you are joining us via the Zoom platform, please just leave a question or comment in the Q&A or in the chat on the Zoom platform. And in a very short while, we will be returning with a panel discussion where I will put those questions to our panelists. For now, you can go stretch your legs, catch a coffee, and in about 3 minutes, we will be having our panel discussion. Thank you very much. From that break, would like to thank you for staying with us here as we have the East Africa Community Post-Budget and Tax Dialogue 2021. We have mentioned several times that one of the articles of the East African Treaty states that partner states shall harmonize their tax policies with a view of removing tax distortions in order to bring about a more effective allocation of resources within the community. Our keynote addresses did look at that concept and where we are at as a country, but specifically looking at directives from the Council of Ministers. We did have a presentation from a study done by civil society organizations led by Siatini, Uganda, and now we're going to have a panel discussion where we will be getting responses, reactions to some of the things contained in the report or the summary that the civil society representative just gave us. Our panel is going to be, will consist of 4 people, 3 who will be here with me, and 1 who will join us virtually from Kenya. And so allow me to invite, these are people that you have already listened to, so I will invite them in reverse order. That is the reverse order of the way they had appeared just previously. I'll start by inviting to the panel Ms. Jen Nalunga, Executive Director of Siatini. Yeah, I know we have very few in the room, but you can clap for her as she comes. Excellent. I'd also like to invite to the panel Mr. Abel Kagumire, Commissioner Customs, Uganda Revenue Authority. I've had you clapping for him. And then finally, Mr. Moses Kagwa, Director, Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. The guest joining us virtually is Mr. Leonard Wanyama. He's a coordinator, East Africa Tax and Governance Network. And as the technical team just makes sure that Leonard can hear us, the other 3 panelists you already know and you heard them speak. And so I'll just very briefly tell you who Mr. Leonard Wanyama is. He has varied experience in development, governance, and international relations in East Africa, having consulted with the Royal United Service Institute. He has also worked as a magazine columnist for the Nairobi Law Monthly and Nairobi Business Monthly. He's a former part-time lecturer of international relations at Technical University of Kenya and Riara University, respectively. He started his career as a project officer for the Society of International Development for East Africa in Kenya. Mr. Wanyama is a recipient of Bachelor of Arts, Social Sciences, Political Science and Economics from the Catholic University of East Africa in Nairobi, and a BA with honors and a Masters of Arts in International Relations from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. I don't know if he's able to hear us. All right, as the technical team makes sure that Mr. Wanyama can hear and see us, I will come to the panelists that are physically present with me. And since I have called people up to the panel, I'll wear my mask, so we all stay safe. You have heard, especially from the presentation that Ms. Nalunga gave on behalf of Siatini and other civil society organizations that they've been partnering with in relation to tax harmonization in the East Africa region. I'll just mention that whereas she ended by talking about the race to the bottom, you realize that this panel will be discussing a race to the top. So basically the opposite of that, other than having, partners reducing taxes so that they can, scoop investors here and there to the detriment of other partner states, how do we instead race to the top? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Kagwa, on your quick responses to what was raised in the analysis.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. Yes, a number of issues were raised from the presentation by the research team of Siatini, and I really want to thank you so much for that. Guy, of course, you highlighted the provisions that are in the treaty on harmonization, and you said they're very general, which is true, and it was intentional and deliberate, because the treaty, like the Constitution, is a general framework. It cannot go into the specifics. So there must be other documents that would give how to implement this. So there could be no guiding principles in that treaty. When you read all of it, you go into the customs section, it lays out the general principles. You go into common market, the general principles. So fair enough, that's how treaties are written. The code of conduct, of course, against what you call harmful tax competition, yes, was negotiated a long time ago, but it wasn't implemented. As you know, initially we had three partner states, but then we brought in more partner states, including Rwanda and Burundi. Then now we have South Sudan. So the process somehow stalled because of the new people who came in and the need to accommodate them. I also wanted to mention that you rightly mentioned in that harmonization does not mean having same rates. It's really having things that are almost similar. If you have the laws and they are similar, and if I go to Kenya as an investor, I'll find that the laws in Kenya on my investments are the same as the laws I'll find in Uganda and the laws I'll find in Tanzania or Rwanda. Not the rates, but the basic principles of the law. That's what we do with harmonization. That's what the EU did. You harmonize the laws and the base so that people understand that when you are talking about income tax, what do you mean by income tax? What is the base? What are you taxing? What is the income that you're taxing? So those things are, as you saw in the ticks, we are fairly together. Our laws, we have been amending them. We started with the VAT. When Kenya started implementing the VAT, we copied a lot of it and brought it into Uganda. And then Tanzania, Rwanda followed suit in having a law that is almost harmonized. When we did our income tax reform in 1997, Kenya followed a bit with amending theirs so that we could have almost the same principles of taxation of income. And that's what also Tanzania did. If you look at the Tanzanian law, you may even be mistaken, thinking that it's the Ugandan law. There are a few things that change, but on the whole, it's a harmonized situation. On the on something that you raised and said, okay, the thresholds for personal income tax are low for Uganda and Tanzania and Rwanda. I think that is what you call a policy choice at the country level. And we are discussing to see what should actually be the optimum. So if you are saying it's low, what should it be? Should it be as high as Kenya? What drives what are the considerations for having a threshold?
Okay.
So those things we needed to look at them. But
She suggested $100.
$100 when the minimum rate, when you go to a place and nobody is paying their employees $100. So you look at the circumstances in your country. Because there's no minimum wage, and people, I'm telling you, so many establishments pay less than $100 a month. So what you do is to say, let everybody make a humble contribution. And for us, that's how we are looking at it. Make a humble contribution. If you are earning 240,000 shillings, how much do you pay in tax on that 240,000 shillings? You pay 500 shillings. And I wonder whether someone really would have a lot of quarrels if they told them that you are going to pay 500 shillings. If they tell you you are going to have your salary increased by 500 shillings, I don't think you would clap. So that is the contribution. It's so paltry. So let's look at all these facts, and I wish we really we can push our private sector, if they can, to up the minimum salary they are giving to people. But the contribution, people should be actually proud and say, well, despite the fact that I earn so little, but I've contributed to the national good. I've contributed to the security of this country. I've contributed to the health system of this country, that when I go to Chirudu, I can get at least medicine. So those are some of the things. On excise duty, I just wanted also to mention that we have done some harmonization work. Unfortunately, we haven't moved since 2019, but we had agreed to harmonize the base and say we start with tobacco products, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, fuel, and we move on. And I think we shall be there. On the differences in tax incentives, I agree. We have a lot of differences, and that leads to a race to the bottom. But what we are doing as a country, and I think we are going to follow suit in the region, is to look at the incentives that we have and to cost their benefits. So we are going to have what you call a tax expenditure framework that is going to look at what are the benefits. Have we gotten employment? Because now for us we insist that you must employ at least 75% of everybody you are employing must be Ugandan, and you must be giving them on your wage bill. It must be going to those people. So we are looking at all that. Have we provided employment? Have we provided value addition? So are you helping our farmers get a market for their products? Have you added value to these products? Ugandans, are you passing on capacity for Ugandans to do more innovations? Are you exporting? Are we getting export earnings? Once we get all that, we shall then be able to go everywhere, even in the EAC, and say, you guys, we are losing money because what we set out to achieve with these incentives, we are not receiving. So we have decided to take some serious research on this matter and see that we move. I think on issue of limited deliberate efforts to harmonize tax laws, domestic tax laws, yes, we haven't moved much, but there's been an effort. As I've said before, when you look at the general framework of our laws in the EAC, they are aligned. The issue of these amendments, if you say you take them to the regional level, it can be quite complicated. Because they are, and right now they are a preserve of national parliaments. So you can't go to EAC and then you get an agreement there and you come to parliament and parliament says, no, I don't want to do that. Then what will be the purpose of that? So we take the customs things there because we know that customs issues are resolved at the regional level. But we were working on this framework. As we see, we have a committee on fiscal affairs, which looks at the different proposals that we are making. They look at some framework on the tax, and every year we tick where we are harmonized and where we are not, and we try to urge all partner states to be harmonized. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kagwa. I'd like to tell you that later on we'll be having a second panel, and on that panel is somebody who served at the East African Legislative Assembly, and probably she can chip in on some where Mr. Kagwa left off. I'd like to come to you, Mr. Kagumire, on your quick responses from the presentation.
Thank you. And thank you, Siatini, for this research. I think tax harmonization is one way of how we'll one of the enablers for integration for the East African community. Because when we harmonize taxes, that means we will not start competing against each other. Yet we are in the same community. But nonetheless, from the findings, it is important to appreciate that we are at different levels of development as partners. So that in the process of harmonization, you'll find that like the GDP for Kenya and Uganda, Kenya is already in middle income. You're struggling to get to middle income. Burundi is trying to get there. So as long as the collection of revenue is not yet centralized, we'll still have these issues coming up in terms of harmonizing revenue. I mean taxes. I think that's what I wanted to bring up. I think the bigger picture is, can we have a central collection at one time, if it is possible, so that it becomes easy. But as long as you're saying you're collecting, Uganda, Rwanda is collecting, Kenya is collecting, and you're at the different levels of development, some of these issues will still clog us and delay. But I agree in principle that harmonization of taxes is the way to go in terms of fostering the integration process. I also wanted to react to the issue of the VAT rates. Yes, Kenya in the whole region is the one charging 16%. The rest of us are doing 18%. And already we are feeling it in terms of the inflow of their goods being lowly priced in Uganda, like wheat flour. You see, every time I'm deploying at the borders, ERA is deploying to fight smuggling of wheat flour from Kenya. Yet they are our neighbors here. And partly it's because they charge 16% and for us we charge 18%. So someone, Bakresa or Mandela Millers or Ergon Millers, they have to fight that competition because of the VAT rate. The price will always be lower. But those are expected. But I think the harmonization of that rate is another issue that needs to be discussed. The other aspect in the report was...
Just before you leave the VAT,
yes,
because Jen did raise the issue on whether the difference of 2% is significant. Are you saying that that 2% actually is significant?
Yes, it is. It
Okay.
is. That's why I'm saying it is impacting us, especially on the borders
All right.
in Eastern region. And in specifically, I gave an example of that one product which
All
we
right.
are fighting.
That 16%.
So if it was harmonized, then the
Mm.
prices would almost be the same.
All right. That 16% is low, and you say that 2% is significant.
Very.
Then what of we're going to come to you, Mr. Kagwa.
Yes.
There is the 8% VAT on, petroleum oils. That's even much lower.
Yes, I brought that as an example to show you how harmonization of taxes is very important as a region if we want to trade together and be together. So these committees which are set up, the fiscal, the committee on customs, every time we meet, every year before we come up with policy measures, these issues come up. But I told you the issues that fail us to harmonize relate to the way we do the collection.
Okay.
Yes, to do the collection. We are at the different levels. So until we reach that level where you find we have one bag, maybe that's when most of these issues that are being raised in the research would be overcome.
All right. I know you have other things to go to, but let's just allow Mr. Kagwa to give some information in relation to VAT.
Yes, information in relation to VAT, I wanted to say that whereas Kenya has a 16% as the VAT rate, they also have a 2% as a training levy that is imposed on a lot of manufacturers. So that compensates for the 18%. So they have that 2%, which goes into the training of people, what do we call it, apprentices. There's that, so when you look at the overall tax, it's actually 18%. But
Even
also,
with that taken into consideration, URA is still struggling because the other side
no,
is low, and
I
therefore,
wanted to tell you something,
you know,
because,
the
yes,
smuggling.
on this, when you look at some issues, I'll give an example of milk. We used to have milk here in Uganda with VAT of 18%, processed milk. But we are selling more milk to Kenya than they could sell to us. So you have to look at these issues of tax very carefully, because there are so many other things that determine whether you are going to smuggle this product or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kagwamire. Can go
Okay,
on.
thank you. Yeah. Then the other aspect I wanted to address myself to was on the exemptions. Same again, it comes to the same issue. If Uganda's focus is on industrialization and import substitution, and you want to grow your industries, and you add local content, then you have to grow your industrial base. How do you do that? You attract foreign direct investment, you attract investors to come here and put factories here. I think of recent, that's why the ministry came up with the idea of industrial parks. The industrial parks, which you raised, I think it's the incentives they are giving them. Me, I'm seeing they are yielding results now. If you look at a product, for example, tires alone, it's like every tile that is used in Uganda was being imported. But ever since Goodwill started in Kapeka, you need to go down and see. I'm the one who collects import duties on tires. We no longer have. People prefer buying from Kapeka because they have enough supply. You have enough clay, you have enough production, and that's the beauty with looking at how you reduce the import bill and then concentrate more on domestic revenue mobilization. And I think this is where the ministry and government is focused too. So the issue should be these exemptions should never be abused at any one time. So whoever gets this exemption, let it be in harmony. We have Mbale Industrial Park, we have Leosheng Industrial Park, we have another one coming up in Imbarara, we have the industrial parks, we have the Namanve. I think it is a strategy that government has come up, and we have already seen results, especially increasing jobs and also local production, and we even have enough to be consumed and also export.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Let me make another attempt to get in touch with Mr. Wanyama, who should be joining us on Zoom from Kenya. Sir, can you hear us?
Hello?
Excellent. Let's get your quick responses or comments in relation to what was shared by Jen, and then just let us know briefly how you're handling in Kenya this whole issue of harmonization.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can see me as well, but I think from Jane's presentation, what I got was that the question of the code of conduct is what was the question that was very interesting to us. This is because, and if you may, let me introduce my organization. The East African Tax and Governance Network is a collective of individuals and state actors who are interested in tax matters across the region. And so our work is to try and bring out the issues of taxation in a more coordinated manner so that they join up with efforts such as CIATINI. Because we then champion the agenda of the integrated East Africa in a more enterprising, prosperous, and progressive manner that is secure for all. Now, why the question of the code of conduct was particularly interesting to us is because of how we approached, for instance, the tax measures put in by Kenya this year. We looked at the budget and we tried to input the following principles. First, that tax measures should not do more harm to Kenyan citizens. Second, that the tax measures are equitable and fair. And third, that any arbitrary measures that may have been put in the proposals are suspended. These are the kind of principles we would be very keen to see in the code of conduct and in its implementation. Why? Because of the three aspects of: first, the context as it is right now of the COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, the perspective of, sorry, just one moment. The perspective of having equitable and fair taxation, and of course, the idea of stopping arbitrary measures then moves us quite squarely in the space of tax harmonization. I think what is interesting from the study is we begin to tackle a number of logics and issues that are out there. For instance,
Leonard,
when
just
you
a second.
think of the logic.
Leonard, could you please enable
Yes.
your camera, because we're not able to see you. I think your camera is off.
How about now?
We can now, I believe we can now see you.
Great. Okay. So
not
as,
yet,
as
not
I was,
yet. I'm told not yet. Sorry about that.
I've enabled the camera, but on my end, I also can't see.
Can you, oh, okay. Can you see yourself though?
No.
You can't see yourself. Okay, then your camera is not yet enabled. But okay, please go ahead. The viewer will have to do with seeing me as they hear you. May not be the best sight, but yeah. I think we have a picture of you behind me, so it's okay. Let's go on.
Okay. Yes. So as I was speaking about this, the logic of the question that really got my attention from Jane's presentation is the logic of SMEs and how to deal with their issues. This is because if we take the experience we had this year in providing tax proposals, we had the goal of supporting SMEs, revising any punishing taxes, preventing tax measures that would increase the cost of business, then maybe providing alternatives that would increase revenues, stopping unnecessary costs, either through administrative processes of the Revenue Authority, in our case, which is KRA, and then just supporting good tax proposals. So that's, in a nutshell, then you capture like the SMEs and you help them as a means to get increased revenues to support ourselves. This is because when I spoke of the logic of SMEs, you find issues like at this point in time, there's a lot of free movement of individuals. Now, if you take the case of right now, there's a phenomenon in Nairobi where Ugandan ladies are pricing out Kenyan ladies as in terms of domestic help. Now, the logic that we normally see, and this is across sectors, is that what our revenue authority would do is that you tax higher, then you ask the employer to be the revenue or remittance agent to KRA. So we would counter that and say, instead of that kind of approach, which is a bit more aggressive and it's very administrative, why don't you support cleaning agencies as employment SMEs? You employ Kenyans, you employ Tanzanians, and you have more structured entities that you can tax, which are small, little companies in place. So those are the kind of things we try to promote. And I see the discussion that and the findings that Jane raised about tax harmonization help in that respect. Increasingly, there's a lot of conversation about progressive taxation, which we are happy that in a gradual process, our revenue authority in Kenya, and I see also in Uganda, are kind of embracing, because of just the need for understanding that you need to improve domestic revenue mobilization. So that is quite helpful. But then again, when you look at the realities of our economy, sometimes I think there are some very punitive measures that come into effect. Right now, I think the debt question is pushing revenue authorities to look for funding to solve the debt issues and also to finance service delivery. If you look at the Kenyan tax proposals this year, there was an interesting increase, I think, on excise in terms of confectionery product, which is like sweets and sugars and whatnot. On the manufacturing side, this could probably mean that you have job losses. But interestingly, on the side of the consumer, we came across instances where we are being told sometimes this could limit oral health options, where people who cannot afford toothpaste are relying more on the mints and so forth. So just understanding those realities is really important. Why? Because our economy is in such a situation where from time to time we might say manufacturing has grown or shrunk, or agriculture has grown or stagnated, or that we are relying on service sector. But one of the challenges of the region is that our manufacturing sector has not had any main transition. And what do I mean by that? That there are no new products that are coming into our manufacturing sectors. In Uganda lately, we have seen the introduction or the initiatives in developing, I think these are electric vehicles, but when will that pick up so that the tax measures around those products can assist us? In Kenya recently, there was the factory on semiconductor chips, but we don't know when do those items become productive for us in terms of taxation. And then also the question of value chains. If we have maize coming from Tanzania into Mila, and it can reach a place like Wajir in Kenya where it's very dry, but you have a very simple and clear value and transport chain so that our products can reach all corners of the East African community, I think we would see a lot of tax benefits for all of us.
All right.
And so I'd leave it at that before any technological challenges hamper me further. Thank you.
I was actually worried about those, but very quickly, Jen did raise an issue around Uganda really from the analysis, it looks like out of the partner states, Uganda is the one that has stuck to, you know, the provisions really in the treaty in relation to, you know, the taxes, things like incentives. Uganda seems to have gone by the book, to the book, and yet the other countries seem to be further off. Do you know why this is the case, especially in relation to Kenya?
I would not give a reason per se, but I would definitely state that Uganda is indeed a shining example to the rest of the region. It's not only just adherence to the commitment of East African integration, but there's also just the mannerism in terms of being not only proactive but participatory. I think whenever they get a chance, maybe with their colleagues at the African Tax Administrative Forum, I would encourage them to maybe ask their colleagues to be more participatory with organizations such as us, because indeed, while we are still on a learning curve in terms of the technical issues and the capacity to contribute ideas and so forth, we still have notions that could help their thinking in one form or the other. In our case, we are looking very keenly about how to infuse human rights-based approaches to tax administration, tax justice, tax management, and so forth. So I think Uganda gives us a good example in terms of the collaboration between government and civil society, but also it can give an example to its neighboring partners as well. Thanks.
All right. Leonard, I'm going to come back to the panel here in Kampala, but hopefully you can try and get your video to work so that when we come back, we are able to see you. And Jane, now I'd like to come over to you. I'm sure there are a number of things you'd like to respond to, but in the analysis you did raise the issue around, you started by saying largely there's harmony around the East African region, and Mr. Kagwa did state the same. However, later in your presentation, you came to specific aspects where there was no, it was hard to trace the harmony. And for example, in relation to rates, Mr. Kagwa says, you know, the spirit is not around the rates. And yet you do mention rates as something important. For example, VAT, income, the taxes on income. Why is this important, despite the fact that broadly there is harmony, at least from the let's call it the policy level?
Thank you so much, Gabriel, and thank you, Moses and Abel, for the responses to our study, and also the comments from Leonard. Thank you so much. I think the issues around rates have also been explained by Mr. Kagwa. Issues around the domestic taxes being a preserve of parliament, and we appreciate that. We are sovereign countries, and as like Abel pointed out, unless and until when we get a common basket, maybe we'll be able to harmonize further. And also the issue which Mr. Kagwa has raised about that it's about the laws, not the exact taxes. That is 16% and 18%. But when it comes to income tax, what does it mean? Is it the same in Uganda? Is it the same in Kenya and Tanzania? But that be as it may, I think, as we have all agreed, regional integration and tax harmonization go together, and we need to strive towards tax harmonization. And I think we need to cede some of our sovereignty for the sake of moving together as a region. And I think the committee, the East African Committee on Fiscal Affairs, could be given more roles to play, not in terms of imposing, but in terms of advising, assessing how far we are towards moving to harmonization, just, you know, assessing and also advising even on domestic taxes. Maybe another issue which I wanted to point out is the issue, again, which has been raised by Mr. Kagon, the tax expenditure framework. And we would like to thank government for coming up with this expenditure framework, because it's really, really important to ensure that we get value for our money. Government at least foregoes a lot of money in these tax incentives and tax exemptions, and I think we need to get our value for money. We need to see that the companies which get these incentives do what they are supposed to do, adhere to the conditionalities, employ our people, and even but provide decent employment. And I think that's why the issue of the threshold on the personal income tax is an issue which we can't exhaust here, but which we should really discuss. People have to have a decent wage. People have to live in dignity. And I agree all of us have to make a contribution. But that contribution should be from a reasonable amount of money. And I think that two go together, the issue of tax incentive and tax exemption. Companies are given tax exemptions. Let them adhere to the conditions. Let them source locally. Let them export. Let them provide decent jobs. Maybe lastly, the issue which you raised to Leonard, I think it's important for Leonard to tell us, for countries like Kenya, countries like Uganda has applauded our relationship with civil society and government. In fact, most of our partners in other countries are asking us, how do you do it? You mean you sit with the Minister of Finance, with URA, and you debate these issues, and you talk, you know, and we say, okay, God is great, you know, that's Uganda. But again, there is the issue of Uganda, the way, like you are saying, we adhere, even our president adheres to the letter of the East African Treaty, that we, like I said, when you look at our local content bill, that's one of the reasons he raised, that domestic means EAC, but other countries are quiet about it. Maybe Leonard can be able to tell us why isn't other countries, especially Kenya, his country, why aren't they doing this, and what are they proposing how are they proposing to move forward?
All right. Let's actually get Leonard to respond to that. And Leonard, since we're out of time, we're not going to end with recommendations. We're going to end with each of us citing the opportunities we see right now, because since this is the first EAC post-budget and tax dialogue, we plan to have one next year as well. So opportunities that we can take advantage of, so that next time we say that in this area we have managed, you know, to cover this ground. Leonard, I hope you were able to hear the question.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
The only unfortunate thing is the video.
We will go with the picture. It's okay. Please go ahead, Leonard.
Well, I think there is, and to speak directly to the question from Jen, there's a history and an orientation in which Uganda has always viewed itself in terms of its place in the regional integration discussion and debates over the years, coming directly from your head of state, President Museveni. For us, I think on a political level, the East Africa community is a side issue. Nonetheless, we are looking for opportunities, particularly with our parliamentarians, to give them this idea that there is more out there for our economy. So it is partly a political debate where they will have to kind of see how Kenya fits into the regional economy, but also how does that fit in terms of our domestic reality? How do we live by being Kenyans and also as East Africans? So essentially, other than our efforts to speak to our parliamentarians directly through every budget process that we engage, there is also the engagement that we are taking at the East African Legislative Assembly. This is where a number of our leaders again meet, and we then have to present these cases so that if indeed it's not happening domestically, for instance, there's an avenue that will kind of champion this and alert the domestic constituencies to those realities. That is just the parliament, but also there are instances in which there is contestation on policy. So whenever the opportunity arises, civil society might just take the chance to use the East African Court of Justice through public interest litigation so that these interpretations might bring forth to light some of the challenges that we are facing and might help force our governments to take the questions of regional integration more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with Jen and actually come this way on opportunities.
Thank you. The opportunities I see, it might be because, like they say, every cloud has a silver lining. COVID has battered our economies, you know, and I think it's an opportunity for us to be able to look at our region together, you know, to be able to trade, increase more trade, increase more cooperation, so that we get out of this crisis, this economic crisis. And one of the areas is to be able to promote more trade, and therefore also to use tax harmonization as a tool to promote that trade.
Thank you, Jen. Yes, Mr.
Thank
Kagwire.
you. Thank you, Gabriel. The biggest opportunity I see with the EAC, as someone who is in charge of all the borders in Uganda, I've been in URA for about 20 years and in the customs department. There's a time trucks would come from Kenya, enter Uganda, offload goods, and go back empty. As I speak now, about 30% of the trucks go loaded. What does that tell you? It means the government policy on import substitution, on industrialization is beginning to bear fruit. We are doing some export. We are doing export. I don't mind whether we're exporting them raw. It's better than not exporting at all. At least we are exporting, whether raw, whether improved on. I'm seeing growth in our exports year in, every other year. Even as a region, we have now started competing in other markets, in DRC. Okay? We are even stretching beyond DRC. We are looking for markets beyond Africa and even within Africa, under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So I think as a region, we've reached a level where we have increased our production to the extent that we even have surplus to export. And that is the biggest opportunity we have, as long as we continue to integrate and work together and harmonize. I submit.
Thank you. I am seeing URA and Siatini organizing that next year when we do this, after we have URA speaking, we'll have KRA, TRA, and the rest. And then, you know, properly, we're having a discussion about taxes in East Africa. Mr. Kagwa.
Thank you so much. My parting shot is to say that going forward, we as East Africans should realize that we have a lot of cultural and social and economic ties, which we can exploit and explore when we really want to have a harmonized regime, not only for taxation, but could be for industrialization, it could be for harmonization of standards, for so many things. We have artisans in Uganda, we have artisans in Kenya, we have people near the border in Tanzania who actually speak the same language like Ugandans. Even when you look at South Sudan, some of our people in West Nile can actually relate quite much with that. So there is that thing that we are actually brothers and sisters in this, and we can do things to promote ourselves. There is a market now of about 250 million people. Though we don't have a lot of aggregate demand because so many people are poor, but the opportunities that if an investor looks at EAC as one investment destination, then they should see the opportunities. So as much as possible, this brings in these issues of harmonization, how important they are. Because if we have a harmonized tax regime, they will help in the free movement of goods and services across the region. So I think for me, those are the opportunities I see. The other opportunity that I'm seeing is that now we have the East Africa, the African Free Continental Trade Area, which needs us as East Africans to explore the markets in Africa. Algeria, they need our milk. Nigeria, they need our maize. And so there are so many opportunities that are coming up. And if we stop looking inward, I think the prospects are there. And I've also seen that, for example, when we are working on the East African crude oil pipeline project, we worked very well with Tanzania. We harmonized the taxes, the domestic taxes in both countries on how the transactions and the income of the eco project are going to be taxed. So it's harmonized, and I think those things are going to follow. I also noted that we still have avenues for discussions. So those opportunities. Kenya came to Uganda and said, you people, we have come to Uganda to establish whether you have capacity to supply us with sugar so that we can allow you to bring sugar. Because there was a lot of issues, contention as to whether Uganda had capacity to supply, that we have excess sugar. So the fact that we can talk as a partner state, I think that would be, it will go a long way to make sure that we harmonize our policies. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Kagwa, Mr. Kagumire, and Madam Jane Nalunga, and of course, Mr. Wanyama joining us online. Thank you very much for your deliberations. Let's give them a hand clap as they take their seats. Because of time, I would like to actually immediately invite our next panel. I'd like to ask the team to help me sanitize these very quickly as the other panel comes up. And now we're actually going to be focusing on a people-centered and market-driven cooperation. For those of you that are joining us via the social media platforms and Zoom in particular, please use the options there for your questions and your comments. I believe that the team, the technical team, will bring your questions and comments to my attention when they do see them. Now on this panel, I will have Mr. Julius Mukunda, the Executive Director, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBAG. Mr. Mukunda, you're very welcome. Please make him feel welcome. Ms. Sheila Kawamara Mishambi, Executive Director, Eastern African Sub-Region Support Initiative for the Advancement of Women. You're very welcome. I am advised that we'll have two people joining us virtually, and I'd like to check if Mr. Kenneth Apollo Bagamuhunda.
Chair, I'm present.
Excellent. That's Director General Customs and Trade, East African Community. Do we have Mr. I believe it's Onesmus Niyukuri, an expert.
It is Mr. Onesime.
Oh, Onesime, I beg your pardon. Oh, there you are, expert international
yes,
trade.
Mr. Onesime, and I'm online.
Excellent, excellent. I'd actually like to begin with the panelists that we have joining us online. It's unfortunate that we do not have much time. We'll be going off very soon. If you could begin by focusing on or helping us unpack the non-tariff barriers and how they've impacted on the East African community intra-trade. It was mentioned in a number of the presentations, and let me start with Mr. Bagamuhunda.
Thank you, Chairperson, and I want to express my appreciation for being invited by Siatini to participate in this discussion. And it's very timely. I think such kind of discourse are usually very enriching at such a times, particularly looking at the analysis of the post-budget. And I want to appreciate the analysis that was presented in regard to tax harmonization, because tax harmonization relates very much to the topic that we are also talking about. I think in looking at non-tariff barriers and all these, and any other barriers, whatever barriers it is to the integration process, one needs to understand the underlying motive of economic integration. If you look at the EAC perspective, the underlying drive for economic integration was the need to promote trade through market expansion. Definitely, the whole concept was premised on the aspect of the bringing countries together and leveraging on the population and economies of scale that are created through that market expansion. And this also goes to the extent of how the market efficiency. And when you are talking about market efficiency, that's when you look at removing barriers that impede trade. Related to this also, the need to promote investment, industrialization, to enhance competitiveness, to also strengthen the EAC position in the global trade arena. I think Mr. Kagwa talked about the issue of CFTA, and I think it is one of the reasons that we need to strengthen our cooperation and integration in order to be able to participate effectively and take advantage of the new bigger markets that are coming in place. And of course, enhancing productivity, value addition, and enhance services, trade in services. Now, these objectives were intended, we would be achieved through specific policy interventions. First and foremost, policy harmonization and development of common policies. And this would be attained through a customs union, which is the trade in goods, basically, to free the movement of trade in goods across the region. Also, the common market, which adds on the factors of production, and the monetary union, which brings in the monetary and fiscal aspects. And this would be attained through common laws and regulations. Now, when you look at the main tenets of the East African Community Customs Union, there are basically three. One was to eliminate internal tariff so that there are no tariffs across the region for goods that are traded between partner states. And this was attained through a progressive basis, starting with the transitional period of 5 years, and eventually we attained the 100% internal tariff elimination after 5 years in 2010. And but this one, of course, is premised on some rules of origin on how goods can be able to be traded, so that you don't have goods being brought from outside and traded as if they are made in East Africa. And I think the essence of this is also to encourage production within the region, so that the goods that are traded free in the region are those that are produced in the region or meet certain criteria. And these conditions are intended also to enhance local capacities, both technological and production, and even human capital. And the other tenet that was underlying the customs union is the elimination of, the common external tariff, so that we trade on a harmonious basis with third parties. And if you do that, then within the customs union, you attain the variation is eliminated, so that there is no motive of countries having their own policy on tariffs, so that the race to the bottom you're talking about and the other distortions that are brought about in trade because of having varying external tariffs would be eliminated. And this to an extent was attained, although we have some challenges right now in terms of sustainability of our common external tariff. But to a greater extent, I think from the beginning, we started from a very high note, having a common external tariff. And the third one was to eliminate the non-tariff barriers. And non-tariff barriers was out of a realization that much as we can remove the internal tariffs, much as we can have the external, a common external tariff, we will not have a full customs union unless we remove the barriers that impede trade in goods. And I think this was the driver of internal trade in East Africa. I, however, think that as we look at non-tariff barriers, we should not restrict ourselves only to goods, but we should look at barriers that impede also trade in services, and we should also look at barriers that impede other movement of other factors: capital, labor, enterprise. There are also barriers that impede their movement. So in essence, the elimination of internal tariff was a big priority in terms of the EAC integration.
All right. Just
and
unfortunately, I have to.
I'm just concluding. The NTBs now, what has been done? Let me summarize that, then I conclude. One is that the EAC is one of the most unique regs that it has an NTB law, which was enacted by Parliament and assented to by all heads of state. We have an NTB regulation. We put in place an NTB time-bound program, which looked at the types and categories of NTBs, and an NTB reporting mechanism platform, which is electronic. And on this one, we have even rolled it out to the TFT area, Commerce and SADC. And we have national monitoring committees in place which look at NTBs from the national level that are reported, and then a regional non-tariff, national, a regional monitoring committee. The importance of the private sector is very critical in this aspect, and they are members of these NTBs. Chair, I think with that, I stop here. Maybe I will add on whatever is remaining later if I have the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's go over to Mr. Onesime in, I believe, Burundi. If you could just update us on the negotiations under the African Continental Free Trade Area. It was mentioned here, and the opportunities there. And how is Burundi benefiting from it, and how can other partners benefit from those opportunities?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the distinguished delegates on the panel and also those who are participating virtually. It's really a pleasure for me to be part of this panel, and would like to thank Siatini and the partners for organizing this dialogue around the harmonization of tax around the EAC partner state. It is really an important topic that we are discussing, and we commend the study that is being developed, and we hope that maybe when it is fully adopted or maybe presented, we think that maybe partner state will learn and from the recommendations that are being developed, they may see the ways and around the study how tax harmonization can be implemented in fully in East Africa. Regarding the update on negotiations at the AFCFTA Continental Free Trade Area, am I being heard, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go right ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. You remember that negotiations started long ago around on trade in goods and trade on services as phase one, and the member states, African Union member states have been negotiating around the aspects on trade in services and trade in services and trade in goods. And you remember that in trade in goods, member state has to develop on 3 categories where 90% of the tariff lines may be, there is a reduction of, or maybe elimination of tariffs on those products, and another category of products where maybe member states feel that on a progressive, there will be liberalization around the 10 years, 5 years, according to the category of member state. There is also category C, where member states feel that maybe this sector or this product, we feel that it is not the right time to liberalize, to fully liberalize on those products. Then it turns around 3%, where on a sensitive product, it turns around 7%, which together combined become 10%, remaining on the 90%, where countries have to liberalize immediately when the agreement come into force. On trade in services, member states also agree to liberalize in most of the sectors, but for this time, 5 priority sectors have been set, and the countries are negotiating, and also member states were supposed to submit their initial offers, and for your information, EAC as a bloc as a community, we negotiate as a bloc, and then we're supposed to have our common offer, initial offer, where partner state.
It seems like we had a...
On the specific.
All right, it's okay. Your network had
Sorry?
gone off for a bit, but it's back on, so you can continue.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Maybe it's internet. I was just saying on EAC, we negotiate as a bloc, and the partner state have already developed their initial offers in the 5 priority sectors, which has been submitted in late December 2020 at the African Union, where the Secretariat of the AFCFTA has to comment the offer, whether on trade in goods or on trade in services, and some of the comments have already been submitted to the EAC Secretariat, and then meetings have been held in order for partner state to look at the comments that have been made to our offer, and then go back and see whether at national we may, whether if it is to clarify on some of instances, on some of the criteria used to prepare our offer as a bloc. So negotiations now are still going, but as we are here now, we may I may inform you that we still have some areas where member states have not yet agreed on. That is maybe for trading services on rules of origin, to agree the criteria of rules of origin, how they can be determined for the products that member state felt that they may bring as liberalized. So negotiations now are still going, but maybe I remember that the summit, head of state summit of December 2020, directed the member state that they have to finalize all remaining areas where we did not agree, whether in trade in services or trade in goods. And then negotiations are still going. And we think that with the deadline that has been given, member states will be able to agree between African countries has been launched in January, and it means that now negotiations are still going, and also intertrade between member states is also have been launched, and maybe the problem now is still on the pending issues where countries have not yet agreed on. So Burundi is also benefiting from these negotiations. Participating as one of the EAC partner states, it also gives a power for us to negotiate and also to be heard during these negotiations.
All right.
Because sometimes we have preparation meetings, preparatory meetings at the EAC level, where either on trading goods or trading services, we have to get common understanding of what EAC really want to benefit from this AFCFTA agreement, and each partner state has its own ways, or maybe the understanding or the benefits or gains that they want to gain from the AFCFTA.
Okay, very broadly, in these negotiations, are the East African partner states negotiating as a bloc, or is each country looking out for its interests? Very, very directly.
We negotiate as a bloc, but each partner state remains sovereign, you know? Yes, we are on a EAC level, and you remember also we have now the trade policy, the regional trade policy that has been developed. Of course, some of the aspects have been harmonized, but broadly, when we are negotiating, partner state has their own interest, what they are looking for, because you may find, for example, in trade and services, where in one subsector or sector, a country has wished to liberalize, another partner state did not wish. So when we are negotiating or when we want to be heard, we go as a bloc. But when then it comes to negotiations as a bilateral, then it is then for each partner state to look the ways where the sectors or maybe on the product that they want to liberalize, what really do they want? But we then come back as a EAC, and because you know we have a customs union and also external tariff, then whatever we can do, we remember that at EAC we have reached the level where whatever we can do, we cannot let me just say, whether it is on tariff or maybe whether it is on external tariff, we remember that EAC has reached this level, and then each partner state has to take into consideration this aspect.
All right, thank you very much. Allow me to come back into the room. I'll just ask one more technical question, and then we'll lighten it up a little bit. And I'd like to put this to Mr. Mukunda. It is clear from the conversations that we are having that there is a mismatch when it comes to linking taxes and allocations and accountability in the region. Where exactly is this mismatch, and how do we start to untangle?
Yes, I mean the discussion on tax really, you know, it's very complicated until you hear the tax collector, the policy person, and you the tax the person who pays the taxes. You get humbled because it's full of so many issues. I think one is when it comes to the collection and then the services, every country would want to see having increased revenues into the coffers to deliver services. But now we have these regional protocols, international protocols, that we feel if we join, we are able to get more benefits. But I think first, it is very, very important and critical that we understand the cost and the benefits of these protocols. Because when you hear Jen telling us that when it comes to harmonization, then there are certain balances, especially on capital gains tax. Because I was looking at capital gains tax. In Uganda, it is above 20%. In Kenya, they are having it at 5%. Simply because I think for Kenyans, they realize that actually they need to protect their trade in that particular area. And I think for us, probably we are a bit, I don't know if we are being a bit more liberal, but I mean, our rates are very high. So what should we do to ensure that we can harmonize so that if I want to invest in any properties, in any services that is likely to attract a capital gains tax, I'm able to say, okay, Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, people in the region, we are almost in similar ranges. The second important element, I think, for me is the whole issue around these common external tariffs, but also especially the issue to deal with these common markets. Again, as we try to collect more taxes, then you are told, do you know what? You are in this particular market like COMESA or in the East African common market. And as such, these goods and services will not attract this particular kind of tax. And this is where you have been getting a lot of money. So if the cost tends to be higher than what you are likely to benefit from the trade, I think it's very, very important that we also look at that particular component and see how much money we are losing vis-a-vis what we are gaining. I was happy to hear that now, with the policies in place, that a number of trucks that come to Uganda, fully loaded, go back at least half loaded. I think it tells you that yes, we are likely to benefit from this, and also to be able to explain to our policymakers the implication. Lastly, for me, is on transparency and accountability. I think it's quite very important for us to understand the implication of these policies and procedures. That the East Africans, we need to understand and say, in Kenya, these are the rates. In Uganda, these are the rates. If I'm trading in Kenya, this is what I'm likely to pay. If I'm trading in Uganda, this is what I'm likely to pay. But on certain borders, like if you go to Sudan, for example, I mean, it becomes a bit, it's different. But Kenya, Uganda, we tend to be on the same, probably on the same line. So I think it's tax information and in a user-friendly manner is very, 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 very important. So that for businesses, the small and medium enterprises, they are likely to understand the implication of the tax they are likely to pay onto their businesses. And with seeing URA having even a mission of being transparent and accountable, I think that's a very good way to go along with. And at the same time, to find that we can be at this level to debate tax issues with government, especially Minister of Finance and URA, I think it's very credible, because I think 5 years ago we didn't have this, but having this tells you that we are all interested in this country and we all want to grow. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me come over to Sheila. Broadly, what these policies are supposed to be people-centered. As we come up with all these things, the people should be at the center. And so I'd like to start with a broad one for you, just putting in context the things that we have had. And from the beginning of this discussion, are they focused on the people?
Thank you very much, Daniel. And I would like to thank all our previous presenters and also discussants. I think to me, when we thought of the revival of the East African community, maybe as a people of East Africa, we were a bit over-ambitious to think that we would be part of the solution for the East African community, given that previously it was politician-based and it had collapsed in our faces. And I think we have not moved very much from what we had in 1977 or what we saw collapsing as the East African community, because well, it is well intended for the people, but are we actually delivering to the people? As a EAC, which is the Eastern African Sub-Regional Support Initiative for the Advancement of Women, we work across the region, and we are working at 20 borders across Eastern African community, including the DRC at Goli and Mahagi. And of course, out of all the revenue authorities so far, Uganda Revenue Authority excels. It is really a star performer across the region in terms of providing information, in terms of involving the people and trying to reach out really to the real taxpayer. As a EAC, we have offices actually, we share like offices with URA at the borders of Elegu, at the border of Malaba, Busia, Mutukula, and even the new one which is being constructed at Goli Mahagi. So it kind of, we work with the women cross-border traders. These are the majority of traders. Sometimes when we are talking about traders across the region, we tend to focus on the big trailer movement of goods. But actually the majority of traders are the small traders. And those are the women cross-border traders, the men cross-border traders, who sometimes do not have the information. So when we are talking about harmonization of tax, for these people, it is real that if I don't understand the Uganda tax regime, then I'm trading across the region. Then I take my goods across Kenya, then I'm moving on to Tanzania. I want my goods in Burundi. But as given the levels of education and literacy rates for the small traders, really, we cannot comprehend those huge books URA, KRA, TRA, or the RAs use. So it becomes very, very complicated for an ordinary trader. So when Mr. Kagwa mentions that laws have been harmonized, thank God they have been harmonized. But has the tax administration been harmonized? To us, that is where the reality is, because I'm dealing with the tax collector. Abel tells us, come next month, we are starting implementation. It scares everybody. And as long as the tax administration is not harmonized, I can assure you smuggling becomes very lucrative. Because if the tax collectors are going to confuse us at the border crossing, then I go in the bushes. And that's where we have challenges. So we need the laws to be harmonized. We need the taxes, at least the administration, to be harmonized so that we understand what's going on. Because when I'm a trader or an investor in the region, I want to have a clear playing field where I know the rules of the game are going to be similar. Mr. Bagamhunda has told us that across the region they have tried to make true. There are certain landmarks we have crossed. But for the ordinary person, these landmarks are still vague, and we need more clarity.
All right, we need to go actually to Mr. Bagamhunda to talk to us about how clarity can be brought to those provisions that have been harmonized. I hope you can hear us.
I hear you, thank you, Chair. And I think I do agree with the previous speaker, panelist, Kawamala, on about what extent has what we have put in place, the laws, the procedures, the various mechanisms that we have set up impacted on the citizenry or the people of East Africa who are involved in cross-border transactions. I think we still have a challenges in as far as implementation of these laws and awareness creation of the laws and procedures and systems that are in place. I, however, want to first talk on the positive side. Much as there is a lot of recurrence of non-tariff barriers across the region. There are more non-tariff barriers that have been solved than those which have remained. Actually, we were taking stock of them recently, and we found that we had already done about 70% of those barriers. And recently, really, there has been even a new motivation and goodwill between partner states to eliminate the barriers. Like recently, Tanzania and Kenya had a very fruitful meeting at high level, starting with the heads of state and then the ministerial. And out of about 35, I think 20 were resolved, 22 were resolved there and then. I think the same has happened between Uganda and Kenya, and I think there is also a lot of progress between Tanzania and Uganda. And I think this is a welcome move. Of course, it is unfortunate that the drive to remove some of these barriers is highly dependent on the political basis in terms rather than a system-driven or a rule-driven rules that we put in place, because the likelihood of them reoccurring is higher than if they are really embedded in a system, an established system or rules that are in place. So I think what we need to do is to get involvement of the private sector, to involve the small and medium enterprises that trade across. And one of the things that also has come out is the effectiveness of the laws that were put in place, like that of the NTB. To what extent is it enforceable? To what extent? And we are trying now, we are revising it to make it more enforceable, put in place sanctions to both institutions and individuals that put in create non-tariff barriers. So the whole aspect. You see, the implementation of the integration process is not dependent only in Arusha by the Secretariat. It is actually more in the partner states. The partner states need to put in that drive. But if you see the challenges that we have, for example, in the tax harmonization process, what has delayed it? It has been in place. This thing has been on our table since we started with the double taxation agreement in 1998. We started doing the harmonization process in 2005 of the domestic taxes, but we have moved very slowly. Some of it is because of the hesitancy at the policy level, at the national level, because they think that the regional initiatives is eating into the policy space. So we need to really rally the policy implementers at partner state level to be the drivers of the implementation process. And I think the creation of the ministries of EAC was essentially for that.
All right.
To drive and lead and champion that. So I agree, we need to really make clarity of what we have in place and get everybody on board so that we can implement the policies that are made at the regional level. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We need to be...
Maybe Chair, one thing that I need to point out about the challenges that we have on NTBs. Some of them is a creation of competitiveness amongst the private players. They are the ones who lobby to impose barriers by the partner states. There has been cases we know about that private sector also participates sometimes in creating non-tariff barriers so that they can impede or outcompete their counterparts coming from the other partner states. Thank you.
All right. I wonder how that ends up, taking priority over, what the policy at the national level or at the EAC should be. But thank you very much for raising that and highlighting that issue. We need to be bringing this to a close. I know specifically that the viewers on NTV will be leaving us very soon, but would also like to hear from you. So I know that some people on Zoom have sent in questions. If the technical team could help bring those questions to my attention so that our panelists can quickly respond to them. Mr. Mukunda, how do we start to now make those alignments? Because the interests are quite many, and now even private sector, seems to have interests that are against the spirit of the EAC community.
Yeah, I think this is it's inevitable, really. But I think for me, what gives me hope is that Rome was not built in one day. And when you see where the EU is, the kind of challenges they have faced, when you come to East Africa, and I think all of these challenges are not insurmountable. We can address them. We need, there is something which Jen said, that we need to part a bit of our sovereignty. But if we want everything, it is ours and ourselves, then that's one of the biggest impediments. There is the issue where we are going to say that probably at one point, there are some powers that we need to secede and give to the regional body. For example, like certification, really. Certification is critical and very important. But if we have different standards, Kenya has the different standards, Rwanda has the different standards. I mean, it will be difficult for all of us to have a same trading area because the standards are different.
Yeah, and we are seeing the effects of that. You say you're not meeting our standard.
Yes,
but which standard?
Yes, and that's another non-trade barrier. So for me is that there are certain things we need to deliberately, as a community really, to deliberately say, let's hand over this to our technocrats because they are the best who can help us manage some of these things. That's number one. Number two, I think also is political leadership is also very important. Is that if we are not able to appreciate the benefits of some of these policies and procedures at the national level, it's going to be extremely very difficult. So political leadership. I mean, for Uganda, I mean, we are lucky that really our president is a champion of the East African community. But